Hi, and welcome to the Seamless Blend, digital textile dialogues with Gabby and Jorgen. Our primary purpose is to educate and initiate discussions. The opinions expressed are solely our own and do not constitute professional advice or services. We invite contributions from our audience and maintain an open community on Discord.
Hello. Welcome to season 2 of the Seamless Blend. We are back. Here is Jorgen. Hello.
Yes. Hello.
So I'm Gabby, one of the hosts for the Seamless Blend, and I wanted to explain to you our new format and what we're going to be doing this season, which is going to be running through from September now through until December. So we've decided for the next 3 months to go for a sort of newsy outdoor broadcast style format and keeping it down to 15 to 20 minutes. So our aim is every week we will be meeting. That obviously has to fit in with our schedules and our working. So sometimes we might be out and about, we might be in different places. I mean, Jorgen is in Hong Kong right now, I'm in London. So the idea is that we'll be able to talk about different elements of digital materials and DPC that have come across our desk in the previous week and anything interesting that's happening in the industry. So that's where we are right now.
Trying something new, season 2. I think maybe for someone, or for maybe those of you out there that didn't hear or see season 1, might not necessarily know who we are. So we can do a quick little recap. As Gabby mentioned, I'm Jorgen. At the moment, right now, I'm in Hong Kong. Normally, I'm based in Copenhagen, and I've been kind of working within 3D digital materials since 2016, 2017. Previously working in textiles manufacturing with fabric mills and garment factories based in Hong Kong. And then in 2022, I moved to Copenhagen, and I've joined a company called Bandicoot Imaging Sciences that has a technology that digitizes materials and focuses on that. So I'm very much in the world of digital materials and DPC, speaking with brands and manufacturers about what's happening out there. So that's kind of my day-to-day. And Gabby and I are having these conversations, and maybe you should do a little recap too, Gabby.
Yeah, definitely. So Gabby Shiner Hill, I'm co-founder of a company called Bureau 555. We are a digital materials service provider. My background is all textiles. So I've been in textiles and materials for about 25 years. So as well as founder of Bureau, which has been going for nearly 3 years and creating digital materials, I'm also an academic and a researcher. I'm also a fellow of Bath Spa University, and my fellowship is investigating digitizing archival garments and heritage garments as well. So lots around digitizing materials, digitizing garments. I've got a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy about this space. And for me, it's really invigorated me after doing 20 plus years in the fashion industry and supply chain. I've now moved into this sort of like technical side and digitization side. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to talk about the title of this episode, which is a tad provocative, let's say. So season 2, episode 1, we could have started with it being called Welcome Back, but that is a tad dull. Is DPC for fashion dead? Slightly provocative. And really, we have called it this because, right, first of all, we're day-to-day working in digital product creation. We're working in DPC. So we do not in any way see that it is dead for fashion. What we do see is different levels of slowdown and different levels of uptake, and then also different levels of maturity. And that's what we want to talk about over the coming 3 months. So don't panic. If you saw the title and it freaked out, do not panic. It's more a case of saying, where are we seeing the opportunity? Where are we seeing the challenges? So Jorgen, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, we talked very briefly about this as kind of where we're going into this season, and we wanted to do these quick little check-ins on a weekly basis, and we wanted also this episode, or kind of like this opening session, to maybe be a little bit of an index point, so that let's say when we get to December, to the final episode of this season, then we're hoping that we can kind of sit and listen to what we talked about at the beginning of the season. And because this is a field that changes very quickly, there's a lot that is happening, we can then come back and listen to what we talked about in a few months' time, and we can kind of have this as a bit of a temperature check, because I think we've both felt this, and we generally hear this from the companies and the people we speak to. There seemed to have been a bit of a slowdown, maybe starting from, let's say roughly from this time last year, around September, October, towards the end of the year. things seem to slow down a little bit, maybe around or people changing their conversation over to AI. AI became a very big kind of a big topic for discussion, and we just almost like moved a little bit away from that initial hype of talking about DPC and 3D, about all the great things that it could do for the fashion industry and other textiles industries. I think we were probably also we got very excited about maybe fabric digitization on the fabric mill level, thinking that we would maybe get there faster, or at least hoping that we would get there, much faster. And then things just take time. So I think right now it's not dead at all, as you've pointed out. It's very much alive. We're talking about this, and we want to talk about it every single week. And we're just seeing that the conversation has shifted a little bit more. It has matured, and different companies are now talking about DPC in a very different way. So there has been a slowdown, but it's also not just a straightforward slowdown where it's just kind of going downhill. It's just the conversation has now shifted a little bit, and it's shifted, I think, over between different topics of, like you mentioned something about sustainability and speed earlier, Gabby, and how do you feel like that's shifted?
I mean, I think there's a couple of different things there, and I think so. Just reflecting back on that, is we need to think about the reality of where we are, politically, like globally, politically and economically, and in the countries that we're working in. So we've seen sort of like a slowdown around, really, if a brand is in a highly competitive market where they've got external players who are biting, like knocking on the door to taking their business, some of those brands haven't had the ability to stop, look at their efficiencies, and be able to then implement DPC to move forward. Even though logically that might be a really good thing for them, that's not necessarily where they've been able to go, simply because it is like, actually, we need to get these sales happening, because they're still trying to recover. So we've seen quite a lot of economic pressures which have stopped DPC being taken on more than maybe just like pilots as a starting point, I would say, on my side. But then I've actually got implementation projects for large digital materials libraries being created with large brands. So we've kind of got it on both sides. Some people saying, well, we've done a pilot, but we're not sure yet. But someone else going, but I've got 4,000 materials and I need these digitized tomorrow, because I need to get speed to market. I need to improve my speed to market. I have to get my selling time cut down by 2 weeks, for example. And this is where I'm having these conversations with brands, mainly with the brands, because the garment manufacturers and the mills are generally at this moment in time responding to the brands' decisions, right? So I'm having sustainability versus speed conversations with the brands. You've got some brands that we're working with who are doing this as a sustainability initiative, because we are cutting down our physical sampling. We are cutting down the waste. We need to report and evidence on our waste reduction and any potentials of waste reduction we have in the future. Fine. And then I've got other companies we're working with who are saying, no, we need an increased speed to market. So actually, DPC, which, yes, can be presented as a sustainable solution, is also being presented as an efficient solution, which is providing speed to market. Can you provide speed to market and also be sustainable? I would say there's tension there. Can I answer that question clearly? I'm not sure. But that's where DPC is almost sitting in that space right now as well as opening up reams of creativity avenues for young designers. And that is just a complete given in some of those areas. So yeah, sustainability versus speed is definitely an area I would like to touch on.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, I think we'll come back to a lot of this, I think, in or as we go through kind of these conversations. And we've also talked a little bit about almost, fashion versus home textiles, which I think is an interesting conversation of where, I think fashion, as a lot of industries are talking a lot about, AI, other technologies, how do we use AI? And I think, it's not that AI and DPC are competing against each other necessarily, but I think just there was a lot of excitement that almost like pulled out of DPC that are now, we're seeing it coming down as the conversation around AI is also, I think, becoming a little bit more mature or changing. But for fashion and home textiles, has been an interesting balance of seeing The fashion industry has, I think it had a lot of challenges in the last year, and let's say even in the last 12 months. There's a lot of things that happen in fashion, in DPC in particular. You have to digitize, as we talked a lot about this in season 1. You have to digitize a material across appearance. You have to get material physics data. You have to gather data, almost like it is master data or metadata or other types of data, and then bring all that together. We've seen now also that home textiles, furnishing and curtains, these kind of things don't necessarily require that physics data. And we've seen also that home textiles is almost like picked up or taken over a little bit of the conversation from fashion. And we see more momentum building in home textiles as it's also now really coming back into fashion. And so I think that's something that we're going to be interesting to follow and to talk a little bit more about over these next few months.
Yeah, and I'm not going to dive too much into that because that really is also an area that you've been straddling between fashion and home. But again, some of the stories we've heard around people using certain technologies or certain scanners for home textiles, and then feeling like they've actually digitized what they need to digitize, right? They've had 2 years, they've had 3 years, they've done their digitization. Now they can move on. And I think we can also think about the fact that with home textiles as well, don't forget you're also playing into sort of like the architecture space, which has been using 3D for a long period of time, used to having digital assets, used to having them modeled. There's a bit more of a crossover in that sense, as opposed to, it costs a lot more to do a sample of a sofa than it does to do a sample of a t-shirt, let's be honest. So we know that those are those differences.
Yeah.
And then we also talked a little bit about the difference between design and development for digital product creation and visualization for the brand. So what's customer facing? So product photography and how DPC can help there. And we know that there is an entire industry behind product photography, where images are sent to processing houses essentially for overnight processing, so that all of those images that you see when you go online shopping are all kind of like spruced up and edited and ready to be put on the website, ready for the customers to see. I think it's really interesting to see how DPC is really making inroads in that space. And I have talked to companies about how product shots is a really, really time consuming moment, and also a bottleneck within their delivery time to getting their product in front of the customer. So again, that's going to be areas that we're looking at, and I've had a bit of work in that space. And also automation helps there as well, right? That's what we'll be.
Yeah, I think in particular, almost like this has been mentioned before, even how, in traditional product development design, you create sample garments or prototypes, of the actual product. And it hasn't necessarily been an expectation that those prototype garments or prototype product has been good enough quality that you can just put them directly in store or use them as your
that's quite rare,
your salesman samples and so forth. But I think an interesting, almost like a new potential, and what we're seeing with DPC, if you're designing and developing your garments in 3D, and if you can do that with the right level of kind of detail and quality, you can also use them for visualization. It's not necessarily a given that they're going to be good enough digitally to be used in visualization for sales and marketing, but there's definitely a lot of potential. I think in that we're seeing more and more, even for retail brands want to take then products to market faster because they have these digital workflows, and also manufacturers can now also sell and market themselves in a whole different way by using digital materials or digital versions of garments, and is becoming a whole different type of collaboration tool between retail brands and manufacturers.
And just quickly on that point, actually, which is around the fact that if you have your digital sample and that is then assumed to be customer facing, there is a demand and an expectation with DPC that digital garment can travel through to be customer facing, which is a very high expectation for the garment manufacturer to achieve from a design sample. And actually that is where there's an expectation mismatch between what you can provide for a quick and easy digital sample and what you can provide, which when it's robust enough and high quality enough to be customer facing. So I think there's also a bit of a tension there, and sometimes there's a disappointment or a challenge because upper management teams are like, well, you've made the digital sample, why can't that just go straight through to be customer facing? It doesn't always work like that.
No, exactly. I think it's interesting, as we're talking about this, and in particular these last 2 weeks now, I've been in Hong Kong and I've met with manufacturers on one side and brands on the other side. We talked specifically about digital materials and DPC, and I was at the current state with a lot of companies, and in particular something I've noticed on this trip now is that it seems to be the conversation has moved a little bit for garment vendors to now see DPC as more of an opportunity, that in this shift, whereas brands have kind of tried to direct the development or kind of take charge of what's going to happen, of who's going to digitize materials and how are they going to work together with their supply chain, and to almost like use these tools to improve processes. I'm feeling now, and based on the conversations I've had in the last 2 weeks, that a lot of the garment vendors are now stepping up and going into DPC and thinking this is an opportunity for us to not just make physical garments, but to now also offer DPC as these value-added services, and we can do more.
Yeah.
And we're sitting right in between the fabric mills on one side and the retail brands on the other hand, and the garment vendors are thinking, okay, let's use this as an opportunity to introduce 3D in the way that we're connecting the different companies, and kind of we're using digital and we're taking charge of this and offering that even more and more of a value and as a service to customers.
We won't go into it now, but I definitely have some thoughts around that, around the value addition for the garment manufacturers, and when it works and when it doesn't, and who is asking and who pays, and all of those things that we want to talk about. So we're trying to be really tight. We're trying to be really tight with these episodes, keep them under 20 minutes. Something that we just wanted to touch on before we kind of close is why we're doing this. Why do we think it's needed right now? And the purpose of what we want to achieve with the podcast. And on my side, I know we've spoken about this together, but on my side, it very much is for a resource for people to come to weekly to hear what is happening in the industry, the positive things that are happening in the industry, a bit of a reality check. Sometimes we can just see LinkedIn marketing from companies, which puts everything in a very rosy, shiny light. And actually, we're in the weeds, we're doing this. What are we seeing? What are we feeling? And what are we being told within, on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis? So for me, that's why I'm really excited about coming together every week, and also doing it in different spaces as well, when we'll have different things happening. And how about on your side, Jorgen?
Yeah, I think I very much I'm thinking the same. It's that we're having these conversations. You and I have been meeting, I think, on almost like a regular basis. We're speaking about this anyways. We started having these conversations more out in the open, and we want to do this because we're thinking, if we're speaking about it, and if you're in the middle of this, and I'm in the middle of this, and we're, understanding and picking up on what people are saying, then why don't we just have these conversations, like a quick little check-in on a weekly basis? You can listen to them live on LinkedIn, or we're trying to just spread this out to where people that want to listen to this are, and then we'll have this as a kind of podcast and a recording that you can find this, listen to it, and so kind of that's the main purpose of us just openly sharing, and hopefully we kind of influence for some positive change. I think is a bit of a kind of a long-term vision for us, but we also want to have this conversation, with anyone else that's listening to this and have questions about it. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. We have a Discord channel that we've also established in the last season. So ask us your questions and participate in the conversation, and so that we can then bring that into this kind of weekly little check-in. And and we'll be back again next week.
Yeah, back next week. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Jorgen, as always.
As always. Very nice. All right. See you next week, Abby.
Thank you for listening to The Seamless Blend. If you enjoyed today's discussion, feel free to subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us and participate in our discussions on Discord. Let us know if you agree, disagree, or have any questions. Until next time, take care.